This is Camille here at Mayfield. Really thrilled to have everybody here to talk about agents in the enterprise and to share some insights from a couple amazing founders on a new company that Mayfield is standing behind to help create solutions in the space. So again, welcome everybody for joining. Give me a couple minutes here to let everybody get logged in, and we will kick it off. All right. So, again, welcome to everyone who's joining the call today. This is Camille here at Mayfield from sunny California. Hope everybody had a nice Thanksgiving break. Welcome back to the 2nd of December here. Amazing, it's already December. We're going to dive into an ongoing series of conversations that we have been having here at Mayfield around the agentic enterprise. And the belief is that we're facing a whole number of opportunities in creating the new AI first architecture that is going to make up the enterprise of the future. We have two special guest speakers today who are going to share both some of the research they've been working on and a vision for both the opportunities, the issues, and potentially some areas where we can collaborate together on creating solutions in this concept of the Internet of Agents that they're going to speak about. So Ramesh, who is a professor at MIT, who I've gotten to know in various events that we've done together, an amazing researcher, has been spending time with Project Nanda, which is an open source project. And together with him is Gunjan Sinha, who is an amazing entrepreneur, number of different very successful companies that he's been part of. And together, they are creating a company that we haven't formally announced yet, but incubated by Mayfield. They're going to share some of the vision of the company and where it's going, and potentially, as I said, an opportunity for you to participate with them. Today's discussion will include some of these topics and many more. I hope for all of you who are joining today to also participate with some key questions. So please use the chat bar, write your question out. I'll bring you up on screen. You can ask your question directly. As you know, I love for these things to be lively conversations, so don't hold back. Please bring your ideas, questions, and appetite for discovery around the agentic enterprise here to the table. We do our annual survey here at Mayfield, and thank you for those of you who participated in it. And I just wanted to highlight, sort of as a preview, because we haven't published the report yet, but one of the things that's just fascinating to me is only a short time ago when we talked about the agentic enterprise, there was a lot of head scratching as to what that might be. And today, based upon the survey responses to the Mayfield report, there are significant quantities of agents actually live and in production amongst the enterprises that many of you are part of. So I think we're moving extremely fast to this concept of the agentic enterprise. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ramesh first. So Ramesh, further the dialogue here by sharing your content, and then as well telling us a little bit about some of the background that brought you to the conversation today.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you, Camille, and so wonderful to be here with all of you. Wow, we have a big audience online already. So I'm going to make some opening comments, and then we can open it up. As Camille said, I'm a professor at MIT and also founder of this whole effort called Project Nanda. Nanda stands for Networked AI Agents in Decentralized Architecture, but it's also the name of my sister. And I'm here with Gunjan Sinha, who's a serial entrepreneur. And the reason I'm enjoying working with Gunjan is that he's the one who actually started the DNS for human beings. Just like we have DNS for websites, he started Whoware in the mid 90s. That's the DNS for human beings. So let's jump into what we mean by Nanda, right? So first of all, what is agentic web? We're kind of in the mainframe era of AI, and very quickly switching to the PC era of AI, where we'll have a lot of edge AI and tiny ML. From there to the intranet, so a lot of agentic activities you're seeing right now is kind of in this trusted enterprise, behind the firewall ecosystems. From there, we're going to move to the internet of AI agents, where they're outside the trust boundaries. And then internet was about connecting machines. The World Wide Web was about connecting people, and Nanda is about connecting agents. So I want you to imagine not just agents within our own enterprise, but these agents collaborating with the rest of the world. Every one of us will have our own agent. There will be billions, maybe trillions of AI agents communicating, navigating, learning, earning, transacting. And this is what requires us to think about the internet of AI agents in new ways, because in the beginning, in phase one, it'll be all about the foundations. What's the identity, what's the auth, what's the security. But soon after that, it's about agent commerce. Agents will create their own stock markets, their own banks, and so on. And then finally, the agentic society, where, when we move to a city, it's not just about our identity and our driver's license and our passport and our jobs, but we create universities, we create venture funds, we create justice systems and so on. And we think agents will also will create their own societies. So I think it's kind of a three-phase opportunities for all you entrepreneurs, all you investors to think about. Every box here, I think it's probably $1 billion opportunity. All of us are kind of in phase one right now, which is the foundations, moving to agent economy and then agentic society. So we can talk about this during Q&A. The second question is, okay, let's assume that billions and trillions of agents are coming. Why do we need to keep it open and neutral? If we compare that with how the World Wide Web emerged, it's kind of an open web where on the bottom left you have the consumers, and you are able to you have complete innovation freedom to create your own website, your own tooling, and through open standards, there's a whole industry that emerges, as opposed to cloud platforms on the right, which are more like iOS and Android or Facebook and Twitter, where these are wall gardens, and you can talk to other consumers and other businesses only through some kind of an app store or a wall garden. And in the agentic world, it could be like the agent store. And that could be very frustrating for a lot of innovators, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of investors, because it'll cause disintermediation. But also, the thing that will frustrate us the most is there'll be opaque algorithms. The same we are all frustrated with SEO, and there'll be also opaque governance that can lead to safety issues. Global South could suffer, and so on. So, there are two ways this could emerge. The red line is where, over the next 6 months, we're going to see very intense protocol wars and partnership wars. We're already seeing like Walmart is working with ChatGPT, for example. Soon after that, those partnership walls will become platform wars, where companies that already have enough users will start using the network effect in a somewhat unethical way. And then that will soon lead to some kind of a monopoly or duopoly or oligopoly. There are only like a handful, maybe only 3 or 4 platforms that have highly vertically integrated solutions for all the agents in the world, including enterprise agents. And that will lead to a lot of innovation friction. That could be a lot of despair and unrest in the agentic economy. Or we could be on the green curve, where we all of us insist on using two-way protocols like MCP, like A2A, like what we're coming up with Nanda. .orgs emerge, like W3C, Mozilla, ICANN, and so on. And then the long tail wins, right? And this is the unlocking of multiple trillions of dollars of economic value that is required, is possible if we keep the agentic web open. All right. And so finally, what can we do together? And what is Nanda doing to create this open ecosystem? So the first confusion I want to address is that when people talk about agents, they're talking about the diagram on the right. Like how do we create agent frameworks, agent tools, cloud platforms, and so on. We really know, everybody knows how to create agents. The left side of the diagram is something that's very, very new and hasn't been built yet, which you can think of as like the OSS stack for the agentic internet, right? Foundation, trust, communication. And in each of these boxes, there's some activity going on, but the whole stack hasn't emerged yet. And that's the goal for Nanda. And I have a very bold title here, which is we are in a post-AI world. Of
Hmm.
course, there'll be always be a race to go from a 96% accuracy to a 97% accuracy for LLMs and models. But we're kind of in a post-AI world, and how we connect these AIs through agents is probably more exciting than the improving individual AI themselves. And just the analogy from right and left is that on the right side is like building PCs in the 90s, but
Yep.
no, the excitement was about creating the internet of those PCs.
Hmm.
So, so we think there are four choke points that need to be solved to keep the agentic web open. So the phase one goal, remember the three phases, the phase one goal for Nanda is to overcome these four choke points to create an open web. The first one is the DNS for all agents. When you have billions, maybe trillions of agents, that's non-trivial. So we have to create a switchboard. So we're working with Cisco and Akamai and Dell and many companies together to launch that. Second is we need some kind of a CA, some kind of a credentials for all of this to improve authentication capabilities, also portability. We call this passport, agent passports. The third is interoperability, which is obvious that we want every protocol be able to talk to every other protocol. And finally, we need some kind of a universal attestation where we can use safety of these agents, because unlike websites, where you can read the website to know what they're going to serve, an agent cannot be probed before
Hmm.
you interact with them. So I encourage you to take a screenshot of this slide, and feel free to explore some of these links.
And
Uh,
and the content there, Ramesh, comes from where? Can you source where all of this is coming from?
Yeah, these are all projects from Nanda, Project
Okay,
Nanda.
wonderful,
Right.
wonderful,
So if you
great.
go to projectnanda.org, you can follow all of these as well. So there are papers, there are reference implementations. There's a very active GitHub, that is evolving very rapidly. There's a fellows program. There's sandboxes, a lot of research, of course. It's partly at MIT, partly at the nonprofit at Project Nanda. So yeah, so play with it, download, build your own ventures, challenge the notion that this will be a closed ecosystem. And so to summarize, last slide is an agentic web is emerging. Don't get too excited by, don't get too enamored by the groupthink on centralized AI of, everybody needs a lot of compute and a lot of data and $100 million salaries and nuclear power plants. I think we're going to move beyond that. And very quickly, we are in this agentic web that's powered by edge AI and tiny ML and low cost solutions. Second is, the window to keep the agentic web open is closing. So we have to act together. And the way to think about that is not think like an intercom where one agent can talk to another agent. That's like building an intercom, but we need the whole telephone system to do that. And the new stock market, the new cities of agents is the exciting future. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a few questions here. I wanted to ask Rafi, and I'm going to bring you on to ask your question. So, Rafi, you were asking about the concerns around privacy, security of agents, access, data controls, personal versus enterprise tasks. I wonder if you want to ask your question. Maybe you can give a little context to your question as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Gamil. Thanks. So, um, I mean, a quick question about agents and I'm speaking in terms of enterprise setting. Yeah. I'll give you a quick example behind my question. We wanted to do like a simple agent through our cloud tenant, which is an enterprise cloud tenant, to have access to, let's say, my inbox and do some tasks automated for for me. And what we realized is that in order to do that at the cloud tenant level, and apologize, going one level deep, um, at the cloud tenant level, you need to open up Graph APIs for the agent to actually uh, go into the inbox, and that will actually open up the API for the entire organization. And that's a privacy concern, that's a security concern. I'm sure there is a way to do that. I haven't yet figured it out, but
Hmm.
that was the reason behind my question.
Great. Thanks, Rafi.
Yeah, we'll definitely cover that. In fact, I see Karan is online, so he's going to cover that maybe later. The point I want to make is that a lot of us think of agentic web as kind of MCP plus plus.
Hmm.
And MCP itself is kind of API plus plus, right? And MCP is not agents, as amazing as they are. So the agent interactions are different than agent to API interactions. And the reason for making the distinction is that APIs being exposed is very dangerous, as you just said.
Mhm.
But agents can have sufficient intelligence where security, privacy, regulatory, all these aspects can be encoded in those agents. So I just want to make a distinction between if you're thinking about exposing APIs through MCP versus thinking about security. But Karan, do you want to say something?
Yes, absolutely. I think that security with respect to authentication and authorization for agents being able to access user data and then users being able to access agents and therefore data that agents have access to, this is something that's going to be crucial in being able to tame what's coming, especially for enterprises.
Yeah.
So Venkat had a question as well. Venkat, I've turned your mic on. Really around how this fits in the language models themselves, and maybe you can go ahead and ask your question. I can't do justice to it. Maybe. Are you there, Venkat? And if not Venkat, then Michael, you had a question as well. I wonder if I could have you chat in on yours. You were asking, how will all these agents be organized and trusted? And I know we're going to get into this, but I wanted you to maybe share a little bit of your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I'm Ramesh. I'm assuming just based on the little bit that we saw already, your belief is likely that over time, uh, platform providers will take responsibility for organizing and ensuring security and trust in these agents. Is that a good assumption by me, or?
I think there's a subtle distinction um, between whether the platform providers should do this or will this become part of the infrastructure. So a quick detour, which is, if you think about the apps world, in the mid 2005 or so, there are a lot of apps that you could sideload on your phone. And the reason why we ended up kind of giving up our freedom and giving up the innovation, flexibility to Apple and Google with iOS and Android is because they said they will take care of the security of these apps. And that was kind of a trade-off between open innovation ecosystem versus security. But maybe it's a false choice, and hopefully we can have both. And hopefully in the second half, we'll be talking quite a bit about security, access control, regulations, company policies, DDoS, and all these things. And I think all of them should be built as part of the infrastructure, and we shouldn't be left to a specific platform.
There's a question here from Arparup about Project Nanda versus Atlas from OpenAI. Ramesh, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so I think these are amazing efforts, browsers that act as agents and so on. But we do want to make a distinction between an agent that represents, a smart entity versus agents that are for coding or for browsers and so on. I think I would call them kind of tool agents as opposed to knowledge agents, as opposed to autonomous agents, right? And there's a hierarchy between them. So a lot of tool agents are emerging, like browser agents and coding agents and so on. I would say they're still tools
Hmm.
in simple words. I think the real excitement with agentic web is when, my agent starts talking to Gamil's agent, even if we don't know each other. And, I as a consumer can talk to an enterprise agent, just the same way today we have a very clunky experience through email or SMS or, apps and so on. So I think that's what we mean by agent to agent interaction. So I think the browser agents are a good start, but they're just tools.
Yeah.
Aparup, did you want to add to your question there? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, for giving me the chance. So the way I'm looking at agents is kind of having a digital employee within the organization, right? And just like we have human employees, they need to be onboarded. There are security protocols, background checks, etc., that happens for human beings. Similarly, the governance and the security and the data protocols that you're mentioning about pretty much is kind of onboarding a digital employee with all those checks and balances in place so that you know that the agent won't go rogue, right? And just like a human employee in our organization interacts with another employee of another organization, similarly, that's pretty much probably what you're trying to say, right? Agent within a infrastructure, within an environment, is interacting with an agent from another environment in
Yes.
a secured manner, right? Now, the reason I brought up Atlas here is if organization, let's say, is using any of the existing fundamental models as their like LLM solution, and there's already agentic browser, then possibly if there is a security and all those governance checks are in place, uh, that enables them to talk to other agents outside the organization too, with those checks and balances in place. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a scary thought, right? That, your agents are, your employee agents are, browsing the web. And I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we used a credit card on a Mozilla browser or a Netscape browser, and there was no, 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 no SSL. And I think, all those issues are going to come up very quickly. And I would say browsers are almost like a crutch. It's almost like an intermediate crutch to something that's going to be very autonomous and full-fledged agents where, your whole screen will be an agent itself. It's not like a particular browser window or something is your agent, but you'll be, like you said, it's a digital twin. Your whole desktop, is your digital assistant. And it'll be doing much more than what you're browsing and so on. You're already seeing some CRM apps providing those capabilities and so on. So I think we are going to go in that direction, but it's definitely scary to think that employees will be engaging with agents without all the solutions that Karan is going to show us a little bit later.
So, Ramesh, why don't we bring up the slides for Gunjan? And Gunjan, why don't you introduce yourself? And Chetna, you've asked a question that I think we'll get into here with Gunjan's content around how does this impact the enterprise application stack as we already know it. So go ahead, Chetna, ask your question, and then Gunjan, why don't you tee up kind of the broader conversation here on where chaos comes together, I suppose.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gamil, and thanks. This is great, very exciting. Thanks for sharing. And as we in enterprises are exploring this option, it is, and to piggyback on what Aparoop said, totally agree. Like it's now like almost, if not, we'll be worrying about our digital workforce. And so I'm thinking about how does that impact our existing landscape where we have all these I mean, they're probably not monolithic, but still not agile enough or modular enough for ERPs and CRMs, our ecosystem there, where we are data exchanging between these traditional business systems. How does that work now in the agent? Well, I like that agent chaos. So maybe that's a good answer.
A good team
Yeah.
for Gunjan.
Yeah, no, then thank you, Gamil and Ramesh and Karan. So I think, just stepping back, I've been an entrepreneur the last 30 years, and I think Ramesh touched upon, I had the privilege and the timing of kind of witnessing kind of 1994 when the web was invented. And I think Ramesh touched upon something very, kind of important. Like if you saw the web, there was a reason why the web became open. There was efforts going on at the time, whether it was W3C, whether it was the DNS, whether it was a whole set of standards about how you think about HTML, XML. There was some openness was built into the fabric of the web that led to the explosion. And in fact, to the point that I just want to cite that at the time, I still remember the Mary Meeker's report, which said, web will be $5 billion in size, and everybody threw up on her that $5 billion is too much. Rest is history, right? The reason why it exploded was because of its openness. So I want to bring that discussion now to the mobile world. What happened was, unfortunately, in the mobile world, and mobile is amazing, by the way, we can't live without our smartphones. I love that. However, there are choke points there. So I feel at some level, when you now fast forward to the agentic world, there is going to be a bigger explosion here. We all see that, right? 25 years there's maybe 300 to 400 million websites. Sounds like a big number, but maybe not. Because if you look at the agentic web, there's going to be billions, like tens of billions of agents in the next 10 years, not 25 years. In the next 10 years, it's happening. It's going to be here and now. So with that in mind, one of the biggest differences about between agents and websites is they're both, at some level, they're nodes, but agents are intelligent nodes. So they can actually have an architecture which can be open. It can be decentralized. It can be for the long tail. It doesn't have to support the wishes and the policies of the few that are governing today. It can be available just like the web was. So part of what we have to be very thoughtful about is we don't want to repeat what happened in the mobile world. And I'm just being very straight here that I saw the web as open, which was beautiful, which was perfect, and that led to the explosion. But the when you look at the entire ecosystem, what happened on the smartphones, there was Android, and then there was iPhone, and there was certain kind of benefits you got of security and guardrails and everything else, which is nice. But I think a lot of that can be achieved in an open world here, which is what Nanda is all about, and that's what we are trying to do as we are conceptualizing. And this is still a code name, so I'm just going to share this. So we are working very collaboratively and closely with Mayfield, Ramesh, myself, and Karan to come up with this, and it's called code named Nasiko, and I'm just going to throw that name out there. This is a name, and I'll tell you the little secret behind the code name Nasiko. Ramesh is from Nasik. If any of you guys ever visit India, you will see Nasik is a beautiful little place there. But that's the underpinning backstory here. But what we are trying to do is to really think about what the agent chaos is. And I look at the chaos, by the way, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of AI officers around the world and CIOs and so forth. People are asking these important questions. Which agents exist? And what are they doing? What data is being accessed? Like in which geographies? Is it violating any sovereignty laws? What is the cost of these agents? Not the cost that it had yesterday, runtime dynamic cost today. How do I do budget to actual tracking? Is that I know that I've allocated $100,000 for this particular set of agents to operate. Is it staying within those guardrails, or is it now blowing up to $1 million because the foundational LLMs, the cost have exploded per token, right? Are they delivering reliability or quality of service on the agent side? And who has access to what agents, right? And not able to consolidate. Can I consolidate the observations of multiple agents so that I can get a cross-agent perspective? It's not just good enough to have one agent's perspective. I want a cross-agent perspective, which is important. Observability is an important topic I want us to reflect on. And, is it important that we think about how to think about these registries and gateways that are going to be needed for the backplane, for the control plane, to kind of tame the agentic chaos? That's what we are trying to kind of do, because while there's going to be an explosion, there's going to be an opportunity. There's going to be a ton of innovation that we are embarking on to make it open. And one of my asks is, as a group, it behooves on us. And I know Ramesh has started the mantle, this is genesis of his research at MIT. And then the reason why I personally got involved in this and is to really create this foundation. And Ramesh and I have launched this foundation called Foundation for Agentic Network. Just like you have Linux Foundation, we now have a foundation for Agentic Network, which has launched Nanda. We are now launching this company with Mayfield to really kind of build that backplane, the control plane, the runtime control plane for the agentic chaos, so that we can actually keep the internet of agents open. Just like the web was open, the internet of agents must be open. We take our learnings, and part of it will depend upon how we collectively do this. So if you get to the next slide, please. So there's things which I feel we can do together as innovators, as entrepreneurs, as executives, in the C-suite, or somebody who's just thinking about it afresh, is like we can shape the future of this agentic AI infrastructure. And I think it's in our hands. Ramesh and I are, open door. I want you guys to reach out to us. Karan is here, you'll see his contact there. Just shoot us an email, But we are absolutely wanting to make sure that the internet of agents stays open, not closed, because that's going to lead to long tail of innovation. It's going to be good for the society. And as Ramesh said, That's where you go into the green line, not the red line, which had distress and all the challenges, right? And I will be looking for, if some of you guys are keenly interested, we can deliver together some sort of a control plane for enterprise AI agents because we're going to learn together. And I want to be looking for that real world agent workflows or enterprise scale kind of collaboration. So let's take few of these. We can do specific pilots. And trust me, these pilots will be successful because we have the right set of people. We have the right DNA coming out of the research, that Ramesh and his team have done, but also the work that Karan is doing and so forth. We have a really solid technical understanding. But I would like to do a couple of these these pilots that we can then start to get into actual execution, so that we are not just talking, but we are actually going into the sandbox, playing, building, and designing and co-designing together. And that's going to be an important part. So I want us to think about how you can actually get engaged in the requirements of this Internet of Agent that we're building through Nasiko, get the early access to the registry and the technical onboarding help and support from Karan and the team here, and really be part of a collaborative movement that we are synthesizing together. I want you to feel that Nanda is yours as much as it's Ramesh and I kind of doing this. And I want to see kind of prolific proliferation of Nanda, because that's the way we make it an open protocol, an open standard. And this is, if you want to draw analogies, this is the Linux foundation of the Internet of Agent, or this is the ICANN, as Ramesh likes to say, of the internet. And I kind of jokingly say, maybe Ramesh someday will be the Tim Berners-Lee of the Internet of Agents. But no matter what it is, I want us to be taking joint responsibility. And I'd love all of you guys to collaborate and connect with us on this. So, Gamil,
So good.
maybe if you want to add anything that I didn't cover, or anything else that you would like me to cover more, I'm happy to.
Gunjan, there's a question here from RJ, really maybe about framing MCP and A2A and other in this open source. And RJ, I opened up your mic here if you want to further ask your question. And I think it's really relative to the open source framing of this architecture and what you have in mind.
Yeah, are you looking to be is Nanda looking to be the W3C org for these agentic protocols, and like how do we get that rolling? Because I feel like it can't happen fast enough. I was with you in the early 90s at the birth of the internet, and things just changed so much more slowly. It was easy to let the computer science geeks get together and realize that we needed to have standards in order for this thing to work. And I feel like it's so much different today. Like, I have the terror around the walled gardens. Like, how can we best prevent that from happening?
Yeah, no. And RJ, I would say that, I echo your sentiment. This is a situation where we have to fly the plane and change the engine at the same time. We don't have time. Like, we got to move really fast. Unlike the last time we had 25 years to do this, the web kind of grew slowly. But our general approach, and I'd like Ramesh to add some more comment to this as well. But you're bringing a very important point. So we want to think about, MCP is addressing a pain point. As Ramesh said, it's an API plus plus at some level. We got A2A, but there are a number of areas which are unthought of where standards and protocols are needed. Now, let me give you an example, right? When you look at, inter-agent observabilities, is there a standard on how you observe things correctly? Are there ways to define explainability between agents properly? Are there tools that we have or protocols that we have that will basically start to say, how do you glue code agents correctly? I create an agent from NA10. Another one person creates an agent from, let's say, LangChain or Agent Force or something else. Can there be a routing layer, which is again like the TCP/IP protocols kind of analogies, if you will? So we need to start to put our collective heads together. And I'm looking for volunteers. So people who really want to participate in this movement should, raise their hand, reach out to us, and engage, because we have a full team of that we have built. And what we'll be looking on the Nasiko side, which is, as I said, the venture, is let's get into some real implementation pilots, because what that would do is we'll give a real kind of understanding in a sandbox environment, how do this work? And we can do that, establish the protocols in parallel. So the time is of essence here, to your point, RJ.
Chetna, you've got a question about the kind of environment that this will support, either agents or other workloads. Do you want to add some color to that?
Yes. So you mentioned thanks, Camille. So Gunjan, you mentioned the Internet of Agents. So in order for us to get there, it's going to be a journey. There will be a coexistence of both agents as well as other workflows. So how do you anticipate the interoperability of the two worlds?
So interoperability of existing systems with the agentic system, is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. So
through the same workflow.
yeah. So I'll tell you what happens is that, I mean, I built SaaS companies myself, and unfortunately, if I have to, and I don't want to be necessarily be that quoted on that, but I would say that there is some real issues there now, because yes, you built the workflow the old way, but that's kind of pre-AI.
Yeah.
Now you move to the next generation. Here, we are talking about the agents, so I don't know if necessarily the modality by which people thought about workflows is going to be the way the workflows will be in the future. So the workflows of the future are going to be very dramatically different. So I think there's every so often the world reinvents. I think this is the point of reinvention. So the SaaS systems have to reinvent, otherwise they'll be just database storage systems for archival. I mean, maybe that's an extreme position, but that's the way I think about it. But I'll let Ramesh speak to that.
No, I totally agree. So my question is, how do you bridge the gap? It's not going to be a one-day flip of a switch kind of a thing. You'll have to hold every company's hands to get there.
Yeah.
Like, how do you see that journey? So there will be a framework that have to support both as the company that are moving from or transferring from one.
And Chetna, so this is again the point, right? Like, if you've thought that, there needs to be some sort of a workflow protocol that needs to exist between how the agents and the enterprise SaaS workflows operate. And if there is a ways, for example, that you could actually connect the dots between them through some standard interfaces, that's a perfect thing for Nanda to define, take comments from the public on, and actually establish a standard on that. Because I agree with your observation that this is not going to be an overnight switch. It will be a 10-year switch, or maybe a 5-year switch, because companies have invested billions and billions of dollars onto these, back office ERP, CRM systems. So I think that speaks to exactly what we are talking about here, Chetna, that, can we establish some standards and protocols to make it collectively easier for that transformation to happen?
Makes sense.
Aparop has a thank you, Chetna. Nice to hear from you. Aparop also has a question, maybe to make an example of Ananda-based agent relative, and maybe Aparop, if you wouldn't mind asking your question with maybe a use case you have in mind as well.
Yeah. So thanks, Camille. So I think one of the common agentic use cases is customer support agent that we are seeing a lot of adoption across, right, enterprises. How would a customer support agent work in the Nanda framework from the way you are looking at it versus what we are seeing today?
Yeah. I'll give you a thought to just kind of get started, right? Today, when I need some service, if I want to go to jetblue.com, my bank and so on, I have to go to their websites and say, hey, my flight is delayed, or I need my refund and things. I go to every different website to talk to them. But imagine if it's the other way around, which is I say on my own platform, in a single chatbot that says, hey, I have some issue with my JetBlue flight. Who can help me? Right? And the JetBlue agent automatically is connected and serves me, right? This is the promise that Google provided to us with Google search engine, which is it kind of re-centralized the web. The web is supposed to be decentralized, but Google kind of re-centralized it. And some people like it, some people are frustrated with it, with SEOs. But nevertheless, imagine if we have a true agentic web where my experience is not very siloed, because if I want to connect my bank information to my travel information to my health information, right now I have to go to 3 different websites. But the dream of an agentic web is that I can create a team of my travel, health, and booking websites, and they can all work with me together to solve that problem. And I think that's the dream of an open agentic web as opposed to highly fragmented websites becoming agents. So I could have my LinkedIn agent, I could have my Facebook agent, I could have my travel agent, which if they're run by different companies, that won't be great. So I think one of the things that Karan will tell you about is that if you're a travel company or a bank or something, you have to kind of change the mental model and not only have enterprise agents that improve the efficiency of what's happening internal to the organization, but how do those agents talk to agents that are out there, billions of agents that are out there, and be available to service them. So I hope that thought experiment will give you some context that it's not about making a website and as a meta distinction between tool agents versus
Got
information agents versus action agents. We don't want to become just information agents.
Got it. So if I've understood this correctly, so essentially it's a protocol which not only I am using, but also JetBlue would be using so that they can talk to each other. Like,
Exactly. And that's what Gunjan was talking about. The promise of the open agentic web is that no matter what JetBlue is using, not matter what Citibank is using, they need to start thinking about this common ecosystem, not just at the protocol level, but also at the implementation level.
Heidi, you had some thoughts based upon your experience at Red Hat around a marketplace, an agentic marketplace. And I wonder if you might share that and maybe we could just brainstorm on what exactly that would look like.
Yeah, no, thanks, Gamil. So I had the great opportunity to work at Red Hat for a couple of years, and I think the model itself, and you mentioned Linux earlier, Gunjan, it's fascinating, and I think the consumer demand, I mean, in our case, it was B2B demand, but the consumer demand for trust as well as combined with innovation. I feel like the innovation and excitement is there around agentic AI, especially in the B2C world. And I'm thinking we're going to hit this tipping point where that trust and vetting and validation is going to really need to kick in. And that I think is perfect for what you're talking about here, because that is an absolute necessary component that has to go hand in hand with the balance. It's like the seesaw balance between innovation without limits, but also that vetting and trust that needs to happen.
Yes. No, Heidi, I think you're exactly speaking to that. Like, I mean, in the agentic world, we have to hold them to be at the same standard of trust, no less than the humans. And what that does is it puts a lot of kind of responsibility on what needs to be done for agents to be trustworthy. So trust is a very important word here. So it's not just about security. It's also about things like they have to explain their actions. They have to explain their actions not just in the near term, 7 years later, because if there was an SEC investigation on their action, somebody needs to be able to go back to their specific action by law, right? So there are data sovereignty laws, there are national sovereignty laws, and other types of regulatory kind of governance, risk, and compliance imperatives that drive a lot of the trust factors. So we have to imagine standards and protocols as well as implementations that will actually build that agentic trust. As much as we trust and as we hold people accountable, we need to hold agents accountable to the same standard, no less, no more. And that's that's an amazing opportunity. So I think, Heidi, what you're talking about is like front and center on Ramesh in my mind. And we are literally looking at what kinds of things that we need to layer in to kind of become, kind of put that trust first and foremost, because that's going to be critical for the adoption. Because without trust, there is no adoption.
Yeah, I feel like that needs to maybe be more center and forward in the discussions that a lot of the technology companies are having around deployment of either AI applications or AI use cases and things like that. And we really need to hype and praise, the ones that have gone through that vetting process. And there has to be some stark contrast between the adoption rate and the impact that it has on the organization when that occurs. And, absent our government putting those things into place, we, I think, have a responsibility to do that. And part of it is going to be creating that momentum and excitement and the differentiation between the non-governed and the non-vetted versus
No,
Thank you.
Heidi, I think, talking about government, I would rather rely upon our own efforts here in Project Nanda here that, we should layer put the governance in place and for this because the speed here is going at such a high speed that we cannot depend upon regulators or the government to figure this thing out. We have to figure it out. We know
Yes.
what this is about. So I'll be very happy if you have specific thoughts, please reach out offline because, we lead volunteers and people with ideas because this is collective work here. This is collective responsibility at some level.
Hey, Toby, I turned your mic on. Wonder if you could share perspective on some of the work you did in spectrum work, 5G, et cetera, relative to agentic web.
Yeah, so been through this a few times, right? We went huge on web services at Motorola. Really hard to do the web services management layer, the policy layer, the directory layer, the security layer. You had to bolt all of that together. There were companies, I won't name the giant bank, but there was a giant bank did 1,000 web services, did a lot of press, and they screwed up the backplane. They had to throw the entire thing in the trash. Everybody got fired. Then move on to 2016, and I led the team that built the first 5G spec, mostly so that Verizon could get equipment out there and test it before everybody else. And I'm literally in the room with some of the best brains applied to this, like the chief scientist from Intel, Matt Grob, the long-term head CTO at Qualcomm, same guy from Ericsson, Nokia, Apple, Samsung, and others. And there were very basic questions like, hey, I wonder if this will transmit through snow, right? So, and these are the world-class experts. So I really think three things about this, right? I think this is moving way faster and is way more complicated when you go down a couple of layers. And I think it's probably moving 10 or 20 times faster. So I think you need to fold in, my experience would tell me you need to fold in some new different things. You need to fold in process intelligence. You need to fold in a usable KM layer. You need to fold in a conflict resolution section and think through that. And then all of that really distills down to, you don't need to think about this as sort of a Linux type effort. It needs to be that plus a we're going to help you get there effort. People will come to this and use this because there's that extra value add. And I think you have to do that because this is, I mean, on the surface, you've got it all on one slide, but actually executing this, crazy hard.
Yeah. Now, Toby, I think you're speaking, Ramesh and I, and, we feel, I mean, the mission is big. And I think that's where the part, but I agree with you that, we need to define these agentic layers. Like, you talked about, let's say, conflict as an infrastructure. What does that mean? That means not everybody has to imagine how agentic conflicts can get resolved. Maybe there is a control plane for the agentic conflict resolution that is kind of standardized and kind of is a core infrastructure. Or maybe there's a need for an explainability infrastructure, which explains things, or there could be other types of such layers that have to be defined, and those can be done by not one company, but multiple companies. But part of what we want to do is to build this control plane that is going to plug this in on almost like a plug and play. And that's the architecture that Nasiko is trying to has been working on over the last year and a half to build this together alongside with Nanda. But I would submit that the point that you're making, that it's a big task, that it is. And I think it would require significant amount of capital, significant amount of intellectual capital, and significant amount of community work, which is what Ramesh and I are trying to drive towards here.
Yeah. So two very quickly, two things related to that. One, I think you have to be able to talk about the value to enterprise of being part of this and not fighting it. And you have to have that story right. Then I think you need to take a step back from the architecture and say, okay, this will work really well in Boston. What do we need to do to make this work in Bihar, for example? Right? And the rest of the lesser developed locations on Earth. Not to be mean about your Bihar, but you know what I mean, right?
I come from Bihar, right? Like that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Your uncle was a finance minister, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, you nailed that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Toby. Dennis, you asked a question about blockchain, and Ramesh, you offered some comments there. Dennis, I've turned your mic on.
Yeah.
So a couple of points, and Gunjan actually touched on the main point I want to make, which is that there's no way that the government, and I agree with Gunjan totally, the government or the legal system can act fast enough on this. And that is to me an extremely important concern. But every time that I hear the word trust, and especially decentralized trust, I think automatically blockchain. So my suspicion is that's part of your thinking as well. And then I also want to address the point about the law and the legal system, which is I think that as people look at this, especially from the technology side, there's a lot of magical thinking about law and the legal system, and thinking that there might be solutions there, or you need to kind of manage to laws that already exist, and that's happening in a world where the legal system and law is just flat out not paying attention to what's going on, and so that's another layer of difficulty. And the comment about Boston is also interesting to me because I think the difficulty with some of the stuff is going to be in these old legacy systems, and that the innovation, as has happened, in different parts of the world, to M-Pesa, one example, innovation is going to happen at the edge instead of where you have all these built-in legacy systems with all this money invested that act very slowly. So anyway, as they say, more of a comment than a question, but I am curious about how blockchain figures into this.
Well, I mean, you're reading our minds here, but I'll let Karan speak to blockchain, and Ramesh can add some color because Karan
I was going to say you brought some smiles here because we're big fans of blockchain, but certain aspects of it are going to be very relevant. I'll give it to Karan.
So I think that blockchain architecture can very nicely complement what's happening in the AI agentic space, both in terms of coordination consensus, but also with respect to an economic layer that can power this. So we do feel and we do find that certain cryptographic techniques that are used within blockchain with certain emerging verification protocols that allow for in the context of blockchain, verification of transactions, but here for AI agents, it would allow for the verification of AI agents and how they connect with each other. The challenge here, of course, would be to make these networks lighter and computationally less intensive.
No, so one thing, Karan, since we have you here, can you take like just 2 minutes? Because I think for the audience, it will be good to get them a quick view of our Nasiko approach and platform, because I want people to understand some of the core tenets of what we have built and what we are building. And as I said to the team here on the call, whether you're interested in Nanda or whether you're interested in this code project Nasiko, I would love you guys to reach out. We have the contact here. Please do so. And we are looking for design partnerships at the enterprise level. I think we want to be very pragmatic in kind of how we actually make it enterprise ready. And that's what Nasiko is focused on. So if you have opportunities, we want to do that. But Karan, can you take a few minutes just to articulate what we are building and what we have? Please go ahead.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gunjan. So here in Nasiko, what we are doing is we are allowing for enterprises to more easily discover agents, for agents to be more visible, and for enterprises to be able to reuse agents that they're building across their infrastructure. Right? We enable this through a intelligent registry for AI agents. And this intelligent registry for AI agents allows for the discovery, visibility, and reusability of agents. And we have certain modules that we've built on top of it. For example, observability. Getting a overarching view on your agents, on the LLM models that they're connected to, on your conventional services, feeding this telemetry data to your Grafana or Prometheus dashboards. This is something that's going to be crucial in understanding how what agents are doing. This is even more crucial when you have multi-agent flows, across different frameworks, across organizational boundaries. Observability is going to play a key role here, right? Then governance and security are two very key aspects. I think there have been some questions already about how do you give the right access to agents for data, for executing certain actions on behalf of people. So authorization, authentication of agents is something that we are very keenly working on, and we've built out a very sophisticated agent gateway that allows for this, right?
So Karan,
both
maybe you
routing
could
for
just describe how people would engage with you directly. You've got your email here. You're mentioning
yes.
a pilot project in a couple months. I mean, what do you expect people to do to help and guide and work with you on as a design partner?
What we're seeing with in our work with multiple enterprises and other organizations is they all have certain challenges that they face when they implement agents or they're implementing agentic flows. They have their own workflows that they're implementing, etc. So an engagement with us to design, we bring certain learnings. Our partners bring certain learnings, and so to really implement a very efficient way of orchestrating AI agents to build out like a very efficient control plane. So that is something that we are looking forward to.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing, and Gamil, to answer to supplement what Karan said, one of the biggest benefits that people would get is we have done so much of research in this area, on where it is today and how do you think about an architecture that will support your control plane. Like, someone remarked that, that entire project at the big bank failed. By actually engaging in this conversation, the design partnership, you start to think through the various layers of the stack, whether it's observability, reusability, discoverability, and we have embedded capabilities. So once you start to play with our system, use the system in pilot, a lot of very important questions will be upfronted. That's how you basically design something which is future ready in an enterprise context. And I think that's part of the benefit that accrues. And for us, what it does is your participation also helps you shape the direction of the product, which is what Karan would appreciate. So I feel like we should look at, if you have opportunities or things where you're building agents, now is a good time to get into the discussion around how to think about the control plane for the Internet of Agents. And
Yep.
that's what Nasiko will deliver.
So there's two questions here. One from EAI-V. I'm not sure who that is, but the question, and I've opened your mic, so please. How will the big guys react? And then Opender also was saying, "Hey, this may be way too early." So I wonder if you could react to those two questions. And Opender and EAI, whoever you are,
Hey,
welcome.
Jamil,
I'd love to hear your report.
This is V from the DC CTO Club.
Oh, okay. Hi. How are you?
Good, man. Nice to see you. Hey, guys, no, love what you guys are describing. It's, sounds awesome. My simple thing was, like you nicely put out, like the closed private gardens where people are making money with some level of, let's call it tool agents as you described it. So to get some of the big guys into your game, like the Open AIs and the Googles, have you started having discussions with them? Because you kind of need them agreeing with you and making your control plane what it needs to be. So those flows can be coming in from their side, if you know what I mean, right? Because people are making money in a closed environment right now, right? And people are investing along those lines already. So it's going to take some good mindset. I'm wondering if you've already started having some of those discussions already.
Yeah. We are working with everybody there. This is a massive effort, with many of these folks. And also want to make a minor distinction between what I would call kind of the protocol plane versus, the bottom row here, right, is kind of the protocol plane, which is okay, which is important. But what's going to happen one level above that, which is what Karan talked about, is the control plane. And there's a global plane. So I think there'll be a lot of kind of protocol wars in the bottom level, but that's not what's going to define the agentic web. That's what we need to kind of just get the pipes running. But what's built on top of that is the key. And we want you to make sure that you'll hear a lot of noise. There's an event next week from MCP on December 10th. They'll make a lot of good announcements. So you'll see a lot of action happening in the syntax plane, but we need to start thinking about the control plane and the global plane.
Thank you.
And then Opender says, "Hey, this is way too early. I wonder if you could maybe theorize on
Yeah.
why we need to begin now. And of course, we are enthusiastic. And Upinder, I've opened your mic if you want to share.
Sure,
Yeah.
Gamil. I think this is just reminds me of something Heidi said about the marketplace and Red Hat, and we try to do that at Santa Cruz operations as well. Chetna summarized it well. This is a very long runway. I mean, we're talking probably 5, 10 years. Uh, there's so much to be done in corporations with agents, and we haven't even touched. We're talking about the needle, not even the iceberg. We're talking about the needle on top of the iceberg. Um, it reminds me so much about the B2B days of 1990s and how much time it took to establish protocols like EDI and FTP and some of the most fundamental foundations. TIBCO tried this, and I think they, struggled for over 2 decades. They struggled to build some things. I think it's a great idea. It's a very, very important. This is a very important to have. I just think the runway is a lot longer and wider and deeper and messy than I think we're talking about today.
Yeah, and Upinder, I would agree with you. These things take always longer than you think it is, and it's always bigger than you think it is. I would agree with your observation. We've seen that movie before. But I'll tell you the part where the need and the urgency is here and now, because one of the things is, if we let things just run its natural course, I fear that these things will become closed systems like app stores, like walled gardens, which is what we can ill afford. So part of what we have to do is to embark on this journey now with a high degree of urgency so that we can set the framework for the right control plane, which actually is multi-agentic, which has people plug and play different things into this architecture, right? And you're not creating this what I call centralized paradigm, but we actually have a more of a decentralized, like let's say if you're trying to define a namespace, like a DNS style namespace, you want that decentralized namespace to be in play here, not a centralized, architecture. So I think some of that work has to happen right away in urgency so that the right architecture shows up for the future.
Gunjan, I don't disagree. I think there's only 3 avenues that I see for a go-to-market strategy, and I think that's what I was commenting on is it's internal within a corporation, agent-to-agent integrations. I think that's the one. The other one is the B2B play, pick two corporations and connect their agents meaningfully, or the third is to build a marketplace. I think that's what I was commenting on is the immediate term. I only see 3 plays. Otherwise, you're boiling the ocean.
Yeah, no,
And
and
we had to be open to the possibility that it might happen in the opposite direction. Right now, everybody's focused on intra enterprise, like I was talking before, and kind of the intra enterprise, then inter enterprise, and then consumer facing. But it might happen just like it happened to World Wide Web. It actually happened in the opposite sequence.
I'm happy to have a debate if that helps you guys.
yes,
Great.
let's
Well,
do that.
thank you, everyone. And we're at the top of the hour. I appreciate everybody's attention and time today. Gunjan, Ramesh, Karan, thank you for presenting today. I'll be sharing content, a recording of today's call as well as the call to action if you want to further engage as a design relationship conversation with the team here at Nasiko. So thank you, everybody, for joining today. Have a good rest of your day and hopefully talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.